Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I'm a visual artist based in Berkeley, California. I'm originally from Zimbabwe and I've been here since 2012. I studied in London for 4 years from 2006 to 2010. I mention all this because it becomes relevant in what I'm going to talk about in my upcoming performance if you're watching this before the 16th of July 2023. But if you're watching it after, then it's about my show, my art performance show entitled Now Here, Nowhere. So this performance has got a basis of DEIB from the perspective of an immigrant. As I was researching the show, I realized that if you're not native to America, you are an immigrant. It's a nation of immigrants. So maybe I should have said from a recent immigrant's perspective. What I would like to talk about is the structure of the show and also the timing of it because it's advertised as a 4 hour show, but it's the actual content, the actual performance itself takes up an hour. After that, there will be a discussion with the audience to have people get the chance to voice their opinions on what they have seen and heard during the performance, because I think it's absolutely healthy to have that dynamic with the audience as soon as the performance is done, while thoughts are still fresh, and it feeds into the development of the performance going forward. So that's the basic structure of it. The first hour will be the performance itself, then it will be followed by a discussion. After that, we will have mingling. I will have artwork up on display also, so audience members will have a chance to talk to me about the work and share their views on it. And now going into the content of the performance, as I mentioned, it hinges. The baseline is DEIB. I've already done a podcast episode on belonging and inclusion, which I'll link below, giving you my views on those. Belonging will take a big part, a very central part in the performance, because I feel if you don't belong, you don't feel included. But also, if you don't feel you have a sense of belonging, you don't open up the diversity within you. We can look at the external diversities, we can look at the verbal diversities that are immediately accessible, but there is an internal diversity which encompasses our creativity, our history, our insights, that does not necessarily come to the surface um, without being prompted, without the right setting for it being available. So when it comes to diversity, I will talk about my perspective on it. And it's interesting that I mentioned the word perspective because as I was researching, I came across Simon Sinek's talk on diversity, and he says it's all about perspective. And I totally agree with that because we have to ask, diversity of what? Diversity of who? um, when is this diversity being applied? And when I look at it, I totally resonate with the idea that it's all about perspective, because we cannot know each other unless we know each other's stories. And the next person's story informs us on who they are. It shifts our presumed perspective of who they are to give us a more concise idea of the person we're working with or interacting with. So I totally resonate with that. And I would also like to um, cite Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who talks about the danger of a single story. We go through life and usually we don't get multiple perspectives of people that we do not interact with in a more intense, consistent way. Even if we interact with them consistently and intensely, sometimes there is the danger of the single story. We have our perspective of them, and if we don't take on a curious nature to ask them why they do the things they do, and how they do the things they do, where they come from, and from their experience. So that constant curious nature of giving each other space to share who we are and how we do what we do is absolutely crucial for diversity. I must say that I have a problem with anything that comes through a system. Um, Actually, let me rephrase. I have an issue with most things that come through a system. When diversity, uh, inclusion, equity, and belonging became a mainstream thing, pushed by the big companies and made as a, a cornerstone within organizations, it has its pros and it has its cons. I would like to quote Denzel Washington when he was being interviewed during the premiere of the movie Fences. The reporter asks him, what does he think of racial dynamics in America? And Denzel said, you cannot legislate love. The reporter was white. And Denzel goes, you're white, I'm black. It's up to us. We have to figure out how we interact, how we engage. And I totally agree with that perspective, because once something becomes legislated and is funneled down to the people, it loses its gravitas, and also its the incentive behind it is not from the people and for the people. It's got an ulterior motive to it. When things happen organically and we create spaces where we're curious about each other and are not quick to judge, and we we're more likely to be more productive in the aspect of knowing who we are personally, because the more questions we ask of other people, the more we ask of ourselves. Introspection, we begin to ask ourselves those same questions. So I think it's a slippery slope when it comes to diversity, because the more you look at it, the more we begin to differentiate. Diversity of background, diversity of color, diversity of thought, diversity of action, diversity of it just goes on and on. So it's a rabbit hole that we digging into, and it also goes to other aspects like equity. Now in America, of course, there is a lot of material on the history of equity in America, and a lot of work still has to be done. um, but when it comes to engaging with the topic of equity, we must be very careful how we address it and when we address it, and also come to the table with solutions, um, and less accusations. Because at the end of the day, the way I see it is, when one member of society is down, that's a danger to the whole society. We are interlinked, we're interconnected, and equal opportunity, of course, is beautiful and great, but we must also factor in meritocracy, merit. I mean, the capability, the capacity to be able to do what is required of that opportunity given. So I don't believe in giving out opportunities and not being accountable for the outcome um, of those opportunities taken. That being said, we must also understand that we have to factor in the diversity of it. Like, people have diverse ways of approaching things. And so the way I look at it and the way I approach it as a manager in my work is to understand who I'm working with first, and therefore to curate the language, or to form a language between the person and I, so that we can communicate clearly on my vision and their vision, so that we form a collective vision, or so that we go for that collective vision together. So when it comes to equity, we must understand that in America, yes, we've had disparities in terms of the quality of education being provided based on location, and that is doing a lot of harm to the society as a whole. Because if some people are left behind because in terms of education based on their location, then they become a burden to the society down the line. So in my view, when it comes to equity, I think they could be great progress made if we rethought our ways of engaging and thinking about what potential looks like and means. What, in other words, if I look at somebody who's hadn't hasn't had the chance to have a great education but has a passion for something, there should be tools for us to be able to assess and develop their potential and their passion, so that they have a shot. Like I mentioned before, it is a slippery slope, because we all signed this agreement that we spend our time, 8 hours of our day during the week, in a space contributing to a common goal, and their deliverables, their results that are expected of our interaction with them, with the system. So at the end of the day, equality of opportunity is beautiful, and the idea of it is really beautiful. Um, but feel it is also necessary to address the fact that results are important. If I'm given an opportunity, I must be able to deliver, or I must have the necessary support to get me to the point where I can deliver. So, yeah, it becomes tricky. The show will cover those elements, social, political, economic aspects from the perspective of an artist. And I mention this, I say from the perspective of an artist because it is necessary to understand the artist's role, or my role as an artist in this space. I'm here to inspire, provoke, um, share insights for inspiration, um, and hopefully plant seeds for new ideas to germinate, but also share my story because that's a healing space. When I share my story, I heal from within. I engage with the audience in a way that makes them see me from an emotional standpoint. So, as an artist, I will come out and I will tell you that I am talented. How you take it, you may take it as me being arrogant. You may take it as me being pompous. You may, you know, or you may be curious and say, okay, show me. So how you take it depends on where you stand, and how you articulate your argument or your feelings towards my statement is a reflection of who you are, right? If you come through and you ask me, why do I say so? Why do I present myself in that way? Then you open up another a whole other dimension to what I am aiming at. When I say I am talented, I am speaking for the youth who out there who do not have a voice. I am saying, if you're good at something, stand up and speak for it. Speak to it. Bring the receipts. Show us what you're good at, right? Use your voice to connect and engage with the community around you and let them see you in your glory. Let them see what you can do. I speak to this because so many of us have had our voices throttled or silenced by social paradigms that dictate that if you speak to what you do, you're being arrogant. If you you can't speak to what you do. Let the world see it for themselves. We live in a world full of information where there's an information overload. And I have seen voices, I have seen talent being downtrodden because people don't have the voices to speak. So, so to the young students, to the young boys and girls out there, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you do well? Stand up and speak to that, not in arrogance, but in a way of sharing information. Say, I am talented, then show us what you're talented at. So that's basically the show. And I hope to develop this show because the more I look at it and dig into it, the more I realize that there's a lot to be said. Um, it also speaks to what Viktor Frankl said, that when he said, if you can't change the world, change yourself. Part of this show has been about changing myself, my perspectives, my ideas of what the world is, my ideas of who I am. And so it's a journey of self-discovery. And I think that if enough of us change ourselves, we can change the world. So that's been it. I'm Victor. Thank you so much for listening.